Little did I know that I would be sitting here telling you about the camping trip. Back in about the summer of 1970, it was in August to be exact, I just graduated from high school, Excelsior High, for all you Excelsior grads. I was dating a girl by the name of Shelley Whalen. Her dad, the entire family, and some relatives, they were all going to go camping. And of course, fishing was going to be the big thing for the camping trip. But because I was playing baseball at Cerritos College, I told her that no, I really didn't want to go. But she kept begging and begging. So I said, well, you know, it might be fun. I've never been camping. I hear people say it's a lot of fun. What do I got to lose? So I decided that I would go. Now, I want you to picture this, though. Now, here's the prominent characters in this story. And everything I tell you is the truth. That on this camping trip, I went with Shelley, my girlfriend, her brother, Steve Whalen. I went with Jeff English, which is their cousin, and John Whalen. Now, I want you to picture John. For those, John's since been passed away. But John was a real slow person. Kind of talked like this. So you kind of want to hurry him up, okay? But you get the picture of what Mr. Whalen was like. And then, of course, Mrs. Whalen, Laverne, who's long since passed away also. But here we are. We're going on the camping trip. It was supposed to be a 3-day trip. So we're on the road and we arrive. Now, the first thing that Mr. Whalen asks everyone to do is, let's find an area for the tent and we'll pitch the tent up there. Great. So my job was to find all the rocks. I'd be good at that, right? So we found this little area and I found every rock. And we pitched the tent up. And then when we got inside, we placed our sleeping bags where we wanted to sleep. Wouldn't you know that the spot that I chose had the only rock left. Now, I don't know if you've ever laid on a rock, but if you have a pet rock at home, try it sometime. Put it on the floor, put a blanket on it, and lay on that thing. And I swear that rock will go from that big to being that big. But there were so many people in this tent. Spots were already chosen. There was nothing I could do. And I knew this was the start of something ugly. Mr. Whalen had a great idea. It was evening, and he says, you know what we really should do? He says we should take all of the fishing poles and let's put them all together so that tomorrow morning when we go fishing, it'll save us a lot of time. Shh, sounds good to me. I've never fished before. Great. Mr. Whalen leaves. He puts me in charge of putting the poles together. So what I do, I give the poles to Steve and Jeff, and they start putting the poles together. Now I have to go find the fishing hooks. I notice that there's a little box that contains the hooks by Mr. Whalen's sleeping bag. So I go over, innocently, not thinking about anything. I pick the box up and I empty the fishing hooks on Mr. Whalen's sleeping bag. I picked out the best ones. I don't know the difference between a fishing hook. I take them over and we start putting them on the pole. Meanwhile, Mr. Whalen came back into the tent. I forgot that I'd even laid the hooks on his sleeping bag and he didn't see them. Of course, I found out real fast I forgot him there because when he sat down on them, he yelped real loud. I was panicky. I didn't know what to do. Mr. Whalen stood up. Now, I want you to visualize this. He stood up, and the sleeping bag is stuck to his hind end. And he's screaming for Laverne to come and pull the hooks out. Well, we all had to leave the tent, and Laverne pulled out the pliers and started pulling out the hooks. It was a bloody mess. It was terrible. But he was in good spirits. Mr. Whalen, being the nice guy that he is, he forgave me. Now, he asked us the night before, he says, what would you people like to have, for breakfast when they get up? And we all said pancakes. Well, the next morning arrives. And old Mr. Whalen says, okay, everybody, rise and shine. And he marches outside, going to fix our pancakes. Now, we're inside. We're kind of sleepy-eyed. The sun's not up yet. I'm not used to this, man. I wait for the sun usually hit about high noon before I got up in those days. But we're going to go fishing. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, Mr. Whalen is probably outside, 10 minutes. Now, there's a little Coleman stove that he's using. And all of a sudden, I hear something. I hear this, help, help, fire. Fire! My God, we run outside and Mr. Whalen had started the barbecue table on fire. Now, I'm not talking about a little spot. I'm talking about this entire table is on fire. Well, the first thing I think of is, my God, this whole forest is going to go up. You know, there's no place to go get water. We don't have any water, so we're taking just handfuls of dirt and we're just throwing it all over this table. Eventually, we get it out. Of course, the table burnt to the ground. It was charcoal black. We ended up having pancakes anyway, and we went out fishing. Now, Mr. Whalen brought along a lot of his working friends, and this one guy had a great idea. He had what he called a fish finder. He says, all you got to do is you take this line and you stick it down in the water, and it's like radar, and they have a little screen in the boat, and then it'll pick up any fish that's floating by, and that's where you'll fish. So we hit the water, about 6 o'clock in the morning. And by about 12 that afternoon, not one of us had caught a fish. Now, I noticed that off on the shore, there was some little boy about 5 years old that caught a fish that was that big, you know, so we knew it was possible, but it sure wasn't going to be with that doggone fish finder. So we came in on shore, and we waited and went back out that evening to catch them again. And I don't know if any of you fish, but they're called bloodworms, or yay thick and about that long. And they're the grossest things I've ever seen in my life. And you know that they nip you, they bite you. And that was the closest thing I had to catching anything, was them biting me, and that was the doggone worms. Well, needless to say, we went out that evening, nothing. Well, I came back in, and it's about, I don't know, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I was all sweaty and stuff, and I asked Mr. Whalen if I could borrow his car. Now, what I wanted to do, they had a nice little area where you can go and get a shower. So he says, sure, borrow the car. So I take it, and I'm gone. I come back. Mr. Whalen is throwing everything out of the tent. Sleeping bags, fishing poles, you name it, whatever he had in there. I said, my God, John, I said, what's wrong? Rich, I've lost my wallet. I said, my God, how much do you have in it? I had over $500. I go, oh, man. Well, we looked through the entire tent, nothing. Go through the car, open up the trunk, and there's his wallet lying in the spare tire. Thank God we didn't lose it. We get up the next morning. We go to fish again. Nothing. We come back in about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Jeff English says, hey, Rich, let's go ride bikes. Great. Nobody else wants to ride. Now, they have these giant steep hills. I'm talking about like a 45-degree angle straight down, right? You don't have to pedal, and I bet I was sitting between 30 and 40 miles an hour with my hair blowing straight back, just riding straight down. But of course, if any of you know geometry, you know it's called centrifugal force. And that anytime you're going at an extreme speed, you don't want to take the outside because you're going to go way out. You want to take the inside when you're dealing with centrifugal force. Now, there were several hills that we could race down. The first 2 hills, I won the race. Jeff came close to beating me, but, you know, not quite. Now, I want you to picture Jeff for a moment. Now, here's a kid that's like a bone, okay? He's so skinny. Little freckled-faced guy, red hair, and he was wearing a blue fisherman's hat, kind of like what an old man would wear, okay? And we're riding these Stingray bikes. Now, you've got the picture. We're coming down the 3rd hill. Jeff is on the verge of beating me. However, he is on the outside of the curve, not the inside. And we're just flying. Well, I hit the inside. But Jeff, wanting to beat me, he stayed on the outside. And off the cliff he went. Now, it was kind of like watching a cartoon. Because I tried stopping my bike, maybe about 25 yards down the road. And I looked back. Now, you see Jeff go off the cliff. And first you see the bike go out, and then down it goes. And then Jeff goes down, and then his hat's the last thing to go. I ran back up the hill, and I looked down this hill like this. And here's Jeff. Jeff's lying like this between 2 gigantic boulders. I said, my God, this guy is dead. There's no way he lived. This is about a 25, 30-foot drop. There's no way he lived. The bike's all mangled. It's bent. I start screaming for help. The Rangers come running down. Now, they go down to Jeff, and he's starting to come out of it, but they're going to rush him to the hospital. Meanwhile, John and Laverne show up. They're going to go to the hospital with Jeff by ambulance. The last thing John tells me is, Rich, take the tent down and pack it up. I said, okay, I'll do it, John, except I've never done it before. They leave. I get in the car, I go back to the campsite. Now, mind you, everything is coming down and I'm just wadding it up, man. There's no science to putting this baby together. John comes back and they said, Jeff's going to live. He has a broken pelvic and a broken arm, but he'll be okay. Doctor's going to sedate him. Okay, fine. Mr. Whalen went over to close the trunk of the car. He was very proud that I took everything down. Now he closes the trunk and the trunk pops back up. I said, wait a minute, John, I see what the problem is, and I put my hand in the trunk to move an object, and he slams the trunk shut on my hand. Now, there's a lot of things going through my mind at that particular time. Basically, the first one was my hand still there? Now, when I could feel my hand, I was trying to pull it. I knew the hand was there. My next most important question was my fingers there? Now, inside the trunk, mind you, I can move each finger, but I could not get my hand from this slammed shut trunk. Now, mind you, John Whalen doesn't even know my hand's stuck. Well, I start screaming at the top of my lungs, John, for God's sakes, open the trunk! Open the trunk! All you see is my arm. My hand is gone. He's going, oh my God. Oh my God. And he's reaching for his keys. But he can't find them. He's screaming for Laverne to come from a tent that's like God knows how many 100 yards away we are. She comes. She has the keys. Opens the trunk. My hand is squashed from top to bottom. It's dented in. They have to rush me to the hospital now. Jeff's already there. He's been heavily sedated. He's got a cast on his arm, a broken pelvic. They rush me to the hospital. As I'm going into the emergency room, the doctor sees John and assumes that he's there to pick Jeff up, and the doctor says, don't worry, Mr. Whalen. Jeff will sleep all the way home. Just get him home and then have him see his own family doctor. Mr. Whalen says, Doc, I'm not here for Jeff. I slammed this young man's hand in the trunk of my car. The doctor says, oh my God. He says, Mr. Whalen, can I give you some advice? John says, sure, Doc, sure. Go home. Go home before you kill someone. Here's the picture leaving the hospital, right? Now, this was supposed to be a happy camping trip. Jeff's being wheeled out by a nurse. He's knocked out, hand is up, propped up like this, and a broken pelvic. I come in behind with a gigantic wrap of ice, and my hand has to be propped up like this. We get into the car, and off we go. However, you think it's going to be that simple, don't you? Well, as we were leaving the hospital parking lot, an old couple came swerving out of control, came out from behind two cars, and I mean, I don't even know how we missed from having a head-on collision in the parking lot, but somehow John swerved to the right and missed these people. Now, that was just getting out of the hospital. We're on the highway home. There really isn't anybody on this highway. Now, I want you to picture this for a moment. Here's a happy family going home, right? In the back seat, on the right-hand corner, is Shelly, my girlfriend. And she's asleep with her head on my shoulder. Actually, I'm on the right side. She's in the middle, so she's like this. Now, to the extreme left is Jeff. Of course, Jeff is heavily sedated, and he's out. In the front seat, right side, is Laverne. And, of course, she's asleep. And then in the middle is little Steve. Of course, he's asleep with his head up against his mom's shoulder. Now, I'm noticing the car is kind of not going straight. It's going kind of back and forth a little bit. And, of course, Mr. Whalen's asleep, and he's driving. At first, I didn't think he was asleep. I saw his head every once in a while kind of bob like this, but his eyes were closed. He was asleep with 6 people in this car, and the car is swerving from right to left, and I'm the only one that's awake, and I'm in the back seat. I'm going, my God, I'm not going to get home. I'm going to die on this freeway. This is the worst trip of my life. I scream, John, for God's sakes, pull over. So I have to drive home with my left hand for 3 hours because John took tranquilizers to rest himself from the experience of this camping trip. Needless to say, I have never been on a camping trip since, and I never will go on one again.